In this presentation, we will take a look at our Adaptive Defense 360 protection model and how we use it to stop ransomware and other advanced threats. Let's first start with a look at how ransomware spreads. Most frequently, we see ransomware spreading via email, typically through phishing methods. Up until recently, these methods have been pretty straightforward. You see an email from Amazon asking for your credentials or to download a file, or you receive an email notifying you that there's an invoice attached that you need to open so you can remit payment. These have been the traditional methods, but even recently we have seen an increase in the effectiveness of this type of attack, primarily because the methods have evolved and become far more complex. Rather than using the standard invoice emails where they try to trick you into opening a quote-unquote invoice, we see attackers actually going into environments, stealing email accounts by stealing their credentials, and then also harvesting the emails. By using this information, they're able to build a story or an argument that is convincing to the end user based on the context of their previous conversations. Through this, they're then able to push out ransomware to a user and successfully have it installed. Some of the other methods we've seen have originated through unpatched internet-facing RDP servers. Attackers will initially try to get in through normally brute forcing an RDP server and then navigating throughout the network. As always, we also see ransomware spreading with software vulnerabilities. Such was the case with WannaCry and Petya. And as in one famous case, we see hackers infiltrating networks of smaller organizations that support larger ones that are the eventual end target. This happened recently with a smaller HVAC vendor with lax security controls. Their devices got compromised, they took them into the larger organization, and the attacker was able to spread and compromise point-of-sale data. Here we see an example or a couple examples of ransomware spreading through emails. We see the Amazon and the invoice examples. Over to the right, the effect that this has had globally. As we mentioned before, WannaCry and Petya were two common variants, two well-known variants that cause serious damage on a global scale to multiple sectors, including hospitals, nuclear plants, banks, ports, and airports. Now, past the initial infection or the initial access, we need to take a look at lateral movement. Lateral movement is the process of moving from one device to the next inside of an environment with a specific goal in mind. Either to infect as many machines as possible or to get to sensitive data that has high value. Lateral movements typically take place in a couple of different methods. Vulnerability exploits such as Eternal Blue and Eternal Romance, brute forcing credentials or stealing domain admin credentials, attacking Windows Active Directory servers, using the SMB protocol. And examples of this include Emotet, Drydex, and TrickBot. Lately, even with these variants, they are starting to evolve as well. Drydex is a little older, but Emotet is still causing lots of problems. TrickBot is similar to Drydex, but overall, these families of malware are considered sort of Swiss knife type of families. They have a lot of different functionality built into themselves, the ability to infect the devices, to hide their presence, to move laterally throughout the environment, and then to form collectively as a botnet. These can be tough to stop and to clean once they're on a network for several different reasons, the activity as well. But once they get onto a device and a hacker has access to that device and they're able to spread, if they're able to spread to multiple networks, it can be very difficult to go in and eradicate these, shut down all of the access for the attacker, and prevent them from reinstalling or gaining access. But additionally, the activity related to these can be difficult to spot. These days we see a lot of living off the land attacks. So we have attackers that are using system tools or utilities that are trusted and are known to be legitimate programs. So even monitoring that activity in the environment, you may see something that looks like an administrator pushing out a tool to all devices to use for day-to-day activities, when in actuality it may be the attacker pushing out tools to further compromise the environment and get to what they're after. So once an attacker or once ransomware gets into the environment, what techniques do they use to bypass antivirus programs, whitelisting solutions, and spam and content filtering tools? Also, should it be enough to have a backup solution in place? We'll start with antivirus programs. Families that we've talked about previously are, as we said, sophisticated types, complex, evolved types of malware with a variety of features that are designed to thwart analysis. Anti-emulation techniques are one of these. Basically, anti-emulation is designed to protect that malware from being analyzed in a sandbox. Through various different methods, they'll look to see where they are running, and if they recognize or believe that they're in a sandbox, they will shut down or destroy themselves. What this does is it prevents automated analysis tools from disassembling and analyzing the new threat and producing a detection or a signature for it. TrickBot is one that just very recently updated some of its emulation techniques. One of the things that it did was, as soon as it got onto a system, it queried statistics related to the running processes. And if the number that it received back was lower than a threshold, it would terminate itself, it would crash and terminate itself. If not, it would continue operating. Another tool that is used is custom packers. That makes it difficult, if not impossible, for AV programs to read and scan against signatures and heuristic engines. And then, of course, which is common now, we have fileless attack techniques and goodware tools, which are difficult to detect, if not impossible to detect, with standard signature files. Now, once we have got past these techniques, we can consider the payload. What we find is hackers will not release their code until they are certain that it won't be detected by any antivirus program. Typically, the way that they will do this is by utilizing free services, such as you see on the right, that will allow you to check a specific file against several different antivirus engines. Only once that particular file comes back scanned clean will they then use it in their attacks. Next is whitelisting solutions. These are solutions that are designed for an administrator to go in and set up a list of permitted vendors or applications that are allowed to operate inside of their environment. Anything outside of this scope is explicitly denied. This is typically done through measures such as MD5 or SHA-256 hashes, digital signatures, or through vendor. However, what we find are whitelisting solutions are no showstoppers for hackers. A couple of the main reasons for this: we still see new variants today that continue to infect systems using legitimate software. So Explorer.exe, PowerShell, CMD, and the way that they use these processes is to inject threads into them and use those for their activities. Where the whitelisting solution fails, if it's just permitting applications by file name or by vendor, is that those applications are typically system files and are normally going to be whitelisted and permitted to run in any environment. What about content spam or URL filtering tools? Are they sufficient in stopping these types of attacks? So as we see here, sometimes, but definitely not always. When we were in the more traditional days of spam and email attacks where the emails were coming from outside addresses or obviously spoofed addresses, these tend to work a lot better. But as we said before, one of the tactics that we're seeing now is attackers are stealing email accounts and using corporate email addresses. That is typically going to bypass content filtering mechanisms. Additionally, it is going to be very, very convincing to the end user that receives that emails. Other approaches that they're using include macros inside of documents, and these are used often to thwart a lot of content filtering. And then finally, the reality exists with these types of solutions that using URLs, known bad URLs, IP addresses, or IOCs from an attack in the past are not going to save your company from an attack in the future. New attacks are going to have a different URL, different MD5, and are likely to be completely new. And lastly, what about backups? Is it enough to have a robust backup system in place? In general, these can be considered effective, but a technique that we see taking place is attackers will go in and they'll steal the backups that are in place for a couple of different reasons. Either that they have identified that there is high value information in those backups and they will steal them and hold the backups themselves for ransom, or they will just outright delete the backups prior to doing something like encrypting the entire environment. This makes it much more likely that a victim is going to pay that ransom. So now we'll take a look at Panda Adaptive Defense and Adaptive Defense 360. Adaptive Defense 360 is an offering of layered protection. We have 5 distinct layers that are operating in unison at any given point in time. Our first layer is signature files and heuristics. The next is contextual detections. The third is anti-exploit technology. Fourth is our 100% attestation service. And layer 5 is our threat hunting services. So our first layer is our signature files and our heuristic scanners. This can be considered more traditional approach. Panda Security has been in the antivirus industry for 30 years. We have a long history of analyzing files and producing signatures for those variants. This is our first layer of defense, and we want to highlight that because, as you see on the right, standing on its own, this type of technology alone is not going to be enough. You have the new and sophisticated malware infecting systems with lower levels of protections for the reasons we saw earlier. Our next layer, layer 2, is our contextual detections. These are very important. This is one of the things that makes our model work so well. These contextual detections consist of expert detections or rules that base detection not just on one specific area, such as a file name or a hash. They take into account the entire behavior of the process and the context in which it's been executed. These complex rules are looking at what's happening in a machine at a specific moment for a very specific process. It doesn't matter if the process is a goodware or badware. Thanks to the complete visibility provided by Adaptive Defense, contextual detections are continually updated and improved to adapt to new threats. Currently, these detections cover more than 300 different scenarios. Layer 3 is our anti-exploit detections. These complement our contextual detections, but they cover one very specific entry point, and that is exploitations of programs. These analyze how the process being exploited is behaving. For instance, if Internet Explorer with a vulnerability gets exploited, anti-exploit looks at the IE process and if it's behaving as it should in memory or not. If not, we remediate the situation. Layer 4 is our 100% attestation service wherein we classify everything that runs. This is something that we do ourselves here at Panda. We confirm every single detection we make. There are no alerts that have not been verified and analyzed on a one-by-one basis. This provides 2 key benefits. Security teams don't have to analyze every single alert in depth. This would result in more personnel or leaving some alerts unchecked, leading to increased security risks. This also reduces mean time to detect and mean time to repair. This is particularly important as delaying a decision for a few minutes can result in a massive infection or data breach. We consider layer 4 our sort of safety net. If we imagine a worst case scenario, we have a brand new file that gets through the first few layers. Our signatures don't catch it, contextual detections don't catch it, and the anti-exploit doesn't catch it. We still have the safety net of the 100% attestation service. If a file tries to run, by default it is going to get blocked and classified by expert technicians and analysis technologies on our side. Also to mention is the risk mitigation that comes with this service. If I can bring your attention to the pie chart on the right-hand side, we see the gray and the green parts of the pie chart. With a traditional solution, the gray parts of the pie chart are unknown. In other words, these can be represented as risk to your environment. These could be any sorts of applications running on the device. If we look at the adaptive defense result, those unknown files have now been classified as goodware, minimizing the risk and the exposure to your overall environment. And then our fifth layer is our threat hunting services. The previous 4 layers have been very important in that they are focusing on catching code. We're looking at files and programs that are trying to attack and infect machines in the environment. Layer 5 is a little different in that it works against hackers or attackers. This is a service that is included in the base cost of the solution, and this is a team on our side that hunts every day, all day long for threats. They are able, through this threat hunting, to develop hunting rules to look for anomalies and general bad practices in an environment. This type of threat hunting happens real time. As an example, we recently found the Russian GanCrab group attacking several clients through RDP. They were able to successfully brute force some RDP servers, but we were able to come in and stop the attacks before further compromise using our threat hunting team. Now let's take a quick look at some competitive advantages. Our EDR solution, Adaptive Defense and Adaptive Defense 360, has been on the market for 5+ years. It is a system that is based on cloud-based artificial intelligence, using several different algorithms such as similarity algorithms and decision trees, neural networks and deep learning models, and 99.98% of applications are automatically classified, and the remaining 0.02% are classified by our threat lab experts. This EDR solution provides us with complete visibility, taking a look at everything that is happening on the machine, allowing us to further define those all-important contextual detections. And highly important is that there are never any suspicious items or items that are under investigation. Security teams don't have to analyze the alerts, and mean time to detect and mean time to repair have been reduced. Right now, Panda's Adaptive Defense 360 is the only solution on the market that classifies 100% of running processes. Thereby, only trusted items are allowed to run. Let's take a look at some other products on the market. We'll start with Windows 10 Defender's anti-ransomware protection. This protection allows you to limit the applications that make changes to your system. It is effective against most ransomware designed to inject code in system processes and encrypt files using legitimate processes. As we stated before, it's one of the same weak spots, that the processes that are used are highly likely to have been previously approved by the user as trusted. There is also Microsoft Defender Device Guard. This can be configured to allow only signed applications to run. However, this is limited to Windows 10 and Server 2016. The weak points here are that it doesn't protect against fileless attack techniques and exploit-based attacks. And then some of the other approaches that we see in the market today, including having files or programs under investigation, being able to adjust sensitivity of detection rules, and having to manage suspicious files. This requires you to apply knowledge and expertise to this situation. This is something that we take care of for you as a managed service with our experts in our labs. So based on what we have discussed today, are organizations properly protected against ransomware? What we're seeing out there is that ransomware attacks have shot up 500% in 2019 over 2018. According to the World Economic Forum, 61% of organizations reported having suffered a cybersecurity attack in 2018. 2019 ended even higher. Customers believe they are protected, but they're still getting infected. So comparatively, what are we seeing in our customer base? In 2019, the total number of malware incidents escalated to our Panda labs neared zero. If we look on the right, we can see the 2019 year-to-date average was 1 incident approximately every 3 weeks, for roughly a total of about 12 incidents over the year. And we thank you for viewing our presentation.